Yeah, so before kind of speaking a little bit about the new album and everything, I wondered, do you recall the first time you kind of spent your own money, your own like earned money on an instrument or a piece of musical gear?
We're still doing it.
First time? Oh, you mean not when your parents bought you something?
I think I bought a guitar pedal or maybe some leads or something.
Yeah, the first thing I would have bought was like my parents had got me an electric guitar when I was at school, and then it got stolen, so I got the insurance money, so it wasn't really my money, but I spent it, and then I spent it on a white Stratocaster, 1987 model, second hand from the music swap shop on Elgin Street in Melbourne, and I bought it because Albert Hammond Jr. had that guitar. I still got it, but it's a bit wrecked now.
My first amp was bought for me for my birthday, and my first guitar was bought for me for Christmas.
When the band started, Ben didn't have really any equipment, so the rest of the band for like consecutive birthdays bought him a guitar and then an amp.
Just slowly built him up.
He didn't get a choice. He didn't get a choice in what he got either.
Then I don't even play guitar anymore in the live setting. So there you go. I bought probably my acoustic would be the first thing I bought for myself.
Yeah.
You mentioned Albert Hammond Jr. there.
Yeah.
Were those the kind of guys you were idolising growing up? Were you idolising quite a lot of bands?
Well, I started to really get into music when I'd moved from my hometown of Adelaide to Melbourne to go to university. And it was just around that time that the Strokes whole thing happened. So that combined with being in Melbourne, which is a very fertile music scene, was when I really went from just someone who played the guitar in their bedroom to someone who wanted to be in a band and was going to do that forever.
Yeah, the Strokes are obviously hugely important to most bands growing up through that era.
I really like the Strokes, the Libertines, and then there was a band in Melbourne called Eddie Current Suppression Ring who were very seminal in our sound and or just like inspiration to do a band. Yeah.
And the music that you guys kind of create is like this kind of rambling rock and roll punky type thing, and it sounds quite chaotic. Was the process for making the album quite chaotic, or is it quite smooth, or the last one?
It's always chaotic making music. It's just sort of part and parcel of playing rock in a rock band, I think. The album was actually kind of stressful to make because we were sort of taken out of our comfort zone in a way with this third album because we went with a new production team. We sort of really challenged us to, extend ourselves musically and sonically.
Rock and roll is always I think the art of walking the fine line between disorder and organisation. Part of what's good about rock and roll is that it is chaotic, but you can't have it so chaotic that it doesn't communicate to people. And that, in the recorded setting, in the recording studios even more, that's a really hard balance to find. Live it's kind of easy because it's loud and all of that primal element of rock and roll is right there, but then when you're recording stuff to try and capture things like that is hard. So it's a mixture of both chaos and sort of process.
Yeah. So when you're trying to capture the kind of live atmosphere of it, do you have to play it like you're playing it live in the studio, or do you play it differently in the studio?
I think you probably play it differently, but you want to capture the sound of what it would sound like live in terms of what's coming out of the amplifiers and the delivery and the vocals or the way you play it. I mean, you obviously have multiple takes if you want to. That was what we tried to do on the first two albums, was capture the band in a live setting, sort of playing together as it would sound on stage. But this one was sort of more rigid in terms of the way we approached it. We sort of dissected the songs a lot more and completely tore them apart and then put them back together.
I mean, from the outside as well, going with that new production team, and the first albums have worked so well, looks like a bit of a risk, but it works really well. Why did you decide to kind of take that risk and go for that change?
Well, we knew there were a lot of elements of our sound that weren't probably being expressed with the way that we were doing it for the first two albums, and that producer, Mark Opitz, he's quite a famous guy in Australian music. He started off working on the AC/DC albums, and he did a whole run of really famous Australian bands like
In Excess.
In Excess, The Angels, Cold Chisel. They're not necessarily that well known over here.
He sort of cut his teeth at Albert's.
So his process was to kind of play live and record it in a live sort of guise. But we wanted, a lot of our influences are a bit different than just that straight out pub rock, as it's called in Australia. So things like Television, Wire,
Gang of
Joy
Four.
Division, Gang of Four. And so I guess the people we recorded it with this time were a bit more, understood those a bit better. And I think with anything creative, I think that we all agree that you've got to keep changing things and challenging yourselves, because otherwise you can get stuck in a rut. So that was a new challenge and just to freshen things up, and we think it's the best album we've done.
Well, I don't. No, I like the album.
So was it Burke Reed and Jack Ladder that you worked with on it?
Yeah,
correct, yeah.
So Burke Reed used to be in a
Fellas?
band called Girling, who were quite big in Australia, and then he has done like Courtney Barnett,
Julia Jacqueline,
DZ Death Rays,
heaps of bands.
a lot of bands. And then Jack Ladder is a solo artist who's makes really great music, and he's sort of more just getting into producing, so they did it as a team. But it was just a really good time, the album. Like, everyone got on really well, everyone was on the same page, and as Ben said, it's stressful and hard work, but it was overall fun.
Especially the nature of like when we did it. Like, you come to the UK and it's 5 degrees or less most days. We did it in the middle of like an Australian heat wave, which is completely fucked up. And like in this like weird studio, but it's like you can sort of hear the weather in the songs, and the mentality that we're in is sort of does have like a sort of stressed out, tired anger to it in terms of maybe the more jagged punk rocky ones, and then like lamenting ballads have that sort of tired nature of a heat wave attached to them.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Having Jack Ladder in there as well, who's obviously quite a captivating performer in his own right, does that feed into it at all, having someone like that in that studio with that kind of presence?
Well, I think Burke Reed is a real sonic master, so he's very interested in like achieving certain tones and working really fanatically to get those things, whereas Jack Ladder was coming at it more from the perspective of a songwriter and a singer, so the way they gelled was really good. Yeah.
And his name's actually Tim Rogers, but there's another famous guy in Australia called Tim Rogers from a band called UMI, so we won't get them confused. But Jack has like a crazy knowledge of music, like pulls out like random gems from. There was this song that he showed me by Chris Spedding, I think, who's actually from the UK. Oh yeah, he would just find like a weird song that you should go for a vibe with, and that's sort of worked really well for us as well, because we were sort of used to the same sort of bands with the same sort of sound as our references.
And there's 2 years have passed since the album that came before it. How do you feel the way that the world has changed in those 2 years feeds into the album? Because obviously being called Doomsday Ballad, and lyrically there's kind of a lot going on.
Yeah, I think that our world has changed because we went from a band that all lived in Adelaide together, which is a fairly insular, small town. And so the first album certainly was about that, and about maybe some of the themes about living and growing up in a place where you feel claustrophobic and are searching for some sort of inspiration. Whereas now we're spread across 2 states. And when a lot of the time when Ben and I were writing the songs, we talked about how the world is so absurd at the moment that the only way to really process that is to greet it with your own absurdism. And at one stage, Ben came up with the image of a sort of apocalypse boogie, like a band playing out in the outback as the world's ending, you know, and everyone's just partying as you know, for the last 24 hours of the world, and what kind of music would greet them. So yeah, I guess the things like Trump being president and a lot of the political stuff that's going on, we don't address directly, but it feeds into the idea that things are so fucked up. The only way to meet that is to embrace it and embrace the chaos.
Well, and embrace it through the best avenue that empowers people the best is through art and music. And you know, people can lose themselves in at a venue or in an album for 45 minutes to an hour at a time, and that's just what it is. And for the other however many hours in a week, it's completely fucked. And you know, there's bushfires burning down Australia at the moment, and there's like a bunch of white men running the world that are just turning it upside down and inside out. So I don't know. Yeah, it's just our version of saying whatever we have to say, what's at the top of our minds with the lyrics. So.
And the way that kind of unfolds with the lyrics, it feels like one cohesive thought, like it kind of flows from start to finish. Even though it changes up in style, it does flow. Was it written over quite a short period of time, or how long did it take you to?
No,
it was actually over a very, very long period of time. Some of the songs on the album date back, like predate the band's existence. There's a song called Cannonball on the album that Alex wrote in 2010, I think. I can't remember some of the other ones, but closer to the time that we actually recorded the album they were written. But yeah, it was pretty much, the album is the natural progression of the band, and maybe songs that we couldn't quite have nailed in previous records. But I think I'm happy that we gave the songs time to breathe and become what they are. And I think that paired with the production team and where the band's head is at and where we are musically, it worked. I know, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that probably should be credited to the producers. Like, one of the things we've struggled with in the past is we've been able to nail the fast rock and roll songs, because that's our natural default mode. Like when we started playing together, we were a garage band, we'd get in and play loud, and those songs were kind of easy. But we also had a lot of songs that we'd like written ourselves that are more ballad and whatever, and Burke and Jack Gladder were able to kind of maybe soften up the harder songs and harden up the softer songs to meet, so that they, and we're glad to hear that if you do find that it is a clear progression, because that was one thing we found hard in the first two albums, is to get those other songs that aren't the rock and roll bangers in there and working in the context of the album.
So did it take you quite a while to figure out, like you say, like Cannonball and Harrow Station, did it take you quite a while to figure out where to fit them in? Did you quite a lot of tinkering?
Not sequencing, but in terms of they changed a hell of a lot. Like Cannonball, for example, it's got this very strange
off-timing bass.
Yeah, off-time, like the bass, it's a really weird groove, like the bass plays on the two of the bar. And that was something Bert came up with, which was totally not... Yeah, at first it felt very uncomfortable to play. And same with Harry Station, that was more of a lot of those more ballad ones he really fucked around with to get them to have a unique edge rather than being something that was kind of straight up. So they took the most effort, most I would say.
To make it sound that cohesive and like to make these choices, creative kind of risky choices, was there something that you came back to before you made these decisions, or how did you decide?
It's hard. That's the most stressful part, I think, for all of us, because we actually recorded 50 demos for this album, and when I say recorded, Ali, the other guitarist, has a studio, and we like multi-tracked them, and so by the time you cut those down to the 20 that you show to the producers, and then the 10 or 12 you're going to record, you're like, these are perfect. These are with so much effort. And then when you take them into the studio and the producer suggests, I think we should like halve the tempo of this song, cut out the drums for the first half, and that's very stressful, because whenever you do something like that, you've been listening to the demo for a year maybe, or 6 months, and then it's like, oh God, we're going to wreck this song. We know it's a good song, but our adage has always been that, if you're going to get a producer in, you have to give them, there's no point getting a producer in and then arguing with them or not trusting them. So yeah, we always, even though it's stressful, we pretty much like let them have their say, because we've kind of done our part by writing the songs and getting them ready, and then you want the producer to come in and add their expertise, and that's why and so it's hard, but yeah, that's the way we think that you get the best results. Because by the time you come to record anything, you've lost total objectivity about it, because you've listened to it so many times, and you really need a producer to come in and help it get to that next level. So there's no point bringing them in if you're not going to trust them.
In that sense, when you listen back to the album now, does it sound different to what it did when you first recorded it? Has your relationship had changed?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah. We don't really listen to it, but yeah, some of the songs have changed quite drastically.
For the better, though. I mean,
yeah.
Songs like Harry Station were. Yeah, I was really worried because that was like a jangling, fast-paced song originally, and then it turned into a halftime ballad. But it's become my favourite song, and probably has the most meaning for me. Just the way, I don't know. It's just the way that Burke was able to draw things out of us, to put us out of our comfort zone. And I don't know. I think I'm getting pissed from this fucking Jamison. Shit, I can't think properly.
Just got one left, don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a bit more of a general one to finish up and round up on. Throughout your kind of history, what do you think's been more important to your success, and why? Friendship or hard work?
Oh,
both together.
Yeah, both together. Like,
Well,
we've been very lucky that we are a band that that are able to get on well together. I mean, we're all disparate personalities, but we've always, every band has conflicts and disagreements, but on the whole, that we are able to ride them out and deal with them quite sensibly.
Well, you have
and
to.
On the other hand, we have always everyone in the band, I think, recognises the value of hard work. We've had quite a lot of, we've had lucky things happen to us, but we certainly have never had anything handed to us on a platter, so we've had to keep grinding, so to speak.
I also think that like very few bands that you see that have any form of success. I think of people like looking at people like Julia Jacqueline or Rolling Blackouts, Coastal Fever, or some other bands in Australia. Everybody works hard. It's a tough slog, and you got to just keep going at it. And the worst thing you can do is fold. You just got to keep being creative and being an artist, and that's what you're there to do. So success isn't really defined by, it isn't, you can't sort of, you just have to, work hard, and that's what success is to us. Doesn't matter how many people listen to your songs. I mean, of course, it's a nice byproduct.
The hard work becomes easy when you're good friends.
Now we're going to kiss.